Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the news at 1. The Chancellor George Osborne says a further £25 billion of spending cuts will be needed after the next election to reduce the country's deficit. Just under half of that, £12 billion, will come from welfare cuts. He said the economy was far from fixed and that 2014 would be a year of hard truths. Now, political correspondent Ross Hawkins has more. He's in Birmingham for us. Ross.
Yes, Kate, we saw a lot of the Chancellor at places like this last year, talking about economic growth. In the new year, the backdrop is pretty similar, but the message has changed. Details about future austerity and cuts, and creating what he's described as a permanently smaller welfare system. The Chancellor back at work with a New Year's resolution to plan another £12 billion worth of cuts to welfare spending, a choice that he says makes sense.
When you see politicians on the telly who say that welfare can't be cut anymore, or even worse, promising that they'll reverse the changes we've already made and increase, say, housing benefit, ask yourself this: what public services would they cut instead?
He's talking about spending after the next general election, and he plans an extra £25 billion worth of cuts, of which £12 billion will come from the welfare budget. So he's considering cutting housing benefits for under 25s and stopping people with big incomes getting social housing. That wouldn't be nearly enough on its own, and the Lib Dems aren't signed up to the plan.
The only people in society, the only section of society which will bear the burden of further fiscal consolidation are the working age poor.
But the broad policy is designed to go down well in places like this, Water Orton, a few minutes' drive from where he made the announcements in this Conservative constituency. The Chancellor's portraying this as a choice: either cut spending on welfare or cut spending on other services that people value. The question is whether voters will see it that way.
In my area where I live, there's a lot of people who live on benefits, and they seem to do fine, to be quite honest. They've got nice cars, nice holidays, everything like that, so I think they're doing okay, yeah.
He's off his head, to be truthful.
Among those who are unimpressed, the Labour Party.
The Chancellor has utterly failed to admit that the reason why more spending cuts will be required well into the next Parliament is because of the failure of his economic plan.
It may sound a risk for him to promise more austerity just as the economy picks up, but he's convinced a tough message will work with audiences here and beyond the factory gates. The Chancellor said hard truths are coming this year. He's trying to say this is the only way to look at this question. In other words, he's trying to begin the year by defining the political debate and hoping that his opponents go along with that. Labour will resist quite hard, and they, of course, will say that rather than worrying about cuts that may or may not need to be made in the future, he should be focusing on the cost of living and the crisis that they say is affecting people now.
OK, Ross.